the voice of ESG.
Hello everybody, welcome to this first Voice of ESG podcast. And this one is going to be directly a very important one, because we are going to talk about CSRD. And to do this, I have invited two of my colleagues, Boekel and Ruben Harding. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
David, could you tell a bit more about yourself before we start?
Yeah, thanks, Jem. David Boekel, CSRD expert within RSM, focusing on transparency and co-worker of Ruben.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a nice bridge.
Yeah.
Ruben Harding, co-worker of David. I specialize within our ESG team more on the strategic questions that company run into. And specifically right now, focus a lot on how companies can use the CSRD to their strategic advantage.
Thank you. Also, welcome to you.
Thank you very much, Jem.
And how many members does the ESG team of the Netherlands consist of?
We currently have a team of 6 people that are the core team of ESG. And around that, we have a more or less flexible part of colleagues that have a interest in ESG and are also covering aspects of ESG.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, we have like 6 people who focus on ESG also from the CSRD aspect on how companies can comply. But if you look at more the governance and the social side, we have a little bit more than that. So then we're 10 or 11 people.
Okay, clear. All right, let's continue towards this very important directive who is coming towards us, the CSRD. David, can you explain to our listeners what the CSRD is and what it entails for companies?
Yeah, it's a European directive that enforces large-size companies to be transparent about their ESG performance. That information has to be shared in their director's report annually, and it has to be in line with a new developed framework called the ESRS framework. And that framework obliges companies to be transparent about their policies, actions, to meet that metrics and targets, but also on the resources that they have, they make available to meet those targets. And companies also need to be transparent about their performance on indicator level, and not only on their own performance of the company itself, but also on the performance that they have in the value chain. So that makes it a massive obligation regarding transparency. The companies that need to be transparent are the large-size companies. So in 2024, you have to be transparent about your performance if you are a listed company. And in 2025, you need to be transparent about your performance when you're a large-size company. And you're a large-size company if you meet a few criteria that are criteria on revenue, balance sheet total, and employees. And those are 40 million revenue, 20 million of balance sheet total, and 250 employees or more. And you have to meet 2 of those criteria.
Okay, that sounds like quite a lot of companies will fall under the scope of CSRD.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And up till now, you of course advised quite a lot of companies already on CSRD. What were the main challenges that companies were facing in preparing for this directive? And maybe you can also give some advice on how they could overcome these challenges.
The biggest impact is awareness. I think the majority of our clients, of the majority of companies in Europe, are not aware of this obligation. Are not. Perhaps they are aware of the obligation because they heard something on the news or read something in the newspapers. But I don't think that the majority of our clients, of all companies that need to be compliant with the CSRD, are expecting this magnitude of impact.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, the CSRD, of course, is a directive on reporting. At least that's how a lot of people see it. But there's basically a difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, of the letter of the directive and the spirit of the directive. And it is, from the European, a real big push that's part of the bigger EU Green Deal to make sure that companies are behaving more sustainably, so they perform better on their ESG metrics. So what we see a lot is, first, they don't really have the awareness about what's coming, but then also what it entails in terms of steps. So what you need to do, like you need to engage your stakeholders. You then have to determine what's your double materiality. Then you have to make plans for how to improve on the material aspects. Then you have to include ESG also in your main strategy. So there's so much that comes with it. And a lot of companies are not aware of that. And even if they are aware, they have large problems of having the right knowledge within the companies to do this. Because it's a lot and it requires a lot of expertise as well.
And at the beginning, Ruben, you told you were more about the strategy part of the CSRD. Did you already see companies putting the CSRD or ESG inside their strategy and working really hard towards it, or is it slowly but lacking?
I mean, it depends on company, of course. Some companies already have a lot of ESG aspects within their strategy, and they just call it their business strategy. But if you look at our clients, most of the times they really see it as a regulatory compliance and reporting aspects. And once then you start the process of going into it and what it entails, and then also what it can give you as a company, then their eyes are open. Then they're saying like, okay, let's comply with the regulation, but then also try to take out these strategic benefits that it can have. And I was just referring to the double materiality, and that's basically the basis of a lot of strategies. Because what you do is you look at the outside world and what risks or opportunities it will have for your company right now, but also in the long run. And you also look from an inside out perspective, and you look how you impact all of your stakeholders, which basically means that you take risk opportunities, all your stakeholders, in deciding on how to act, which basically provides you a focus for your ESG strategy. So the CSRD really forces you or gives you, let's say, tools to see where you want to prioritize and maybe also strategize as a company to perform better in the future.
And not only your own company, but your value chain as well. So you have a large impact as a company on society, but certain companies have a larger impact, not as their own activity, but in the value chain. So if your impact lies in the value chain, then you need to then you're facing more struggles even then, because information in the value chain is perhaps harder to obtain if you are not the owner of the company, but you're just one partner of the value chain. So that makes it difficult as well.
It seems like it's quite comprehensive list of reporting obligations. What I am curious at nowadays, like you all know, I am working within a technology team. Are there some kind of evolving developments or technologies helping companies in this list of CSRD requirements?
Yeah, we face a lack of...
Or let me put it differently.
Yeah.
How do you see the role of technology in meeting these CSRD requirements?
Yeah, we face a lack of resources, human capital resources, for instance. And I think, ESG is a very, very new area. It's a huge assignment that we've given ourselves by adopting the Paris Agreement, and that huge obligation that we have put on ourselves is we need to go to meet those demands that we've put ourselves on global warming, on biodiversity, on resource usage, and that requires us to gain insight in value chains, gain insight in processes, and I think the human mind is not able to overview that in one way. So I think technology could support us, should support us. Not sure how and in which way, but for example, in the assurance department that we have also been within RSM, we also face a lack of capacity human-wise. So technology could also play a role there to support us in gaining much more reliable information, more information. And I think that would be a huge benefit of technology, or huge potential of technology.
I think complying with the CSRD or, doing ESG as a company, you can't see it separately from using the right technology. Of course, in the beginning phase right now, when you determine materiality or consulting your stakeholders, seeing what the risks are, you can do without technology. But a lot of the problems that companies face is how to manage their data correctly, because this is about non-financial information, and financial information has been regulated for so long, so you exactly know where it is in your company. Now I think if you're just applying with the standards or the indicators that you have to report on that every company has to report on, you need to have more than 81 indicators that you have to track, but that's buried somewhere in your organization or outside of your organization. So to be able to collect all of these, this is a really huge assignment, and in that technology can play a really big part. The question is though, what is the right way to go about it? Because of course there's a lot of tools that you can that can help, but is it the right tool for your company? Does it fit with the technology systems or the software systems that you use as a company? And those are still also pretty intricate questions that a lot of companies are dealing with.
Okay.
And in preparing information, we could use technology, but also when we all have information about the ESG, our companies have prepared information about the ESG, we also need to value it. We need to interpret it. We got information from various aspects, environmental parts, social parts, and we need to value them. So we need to make new decisions about how we use this information. We've used the financial information to make decisions for a long time ago. But now we need to incorporate non-financial information as well in our decision-making process. And I think technology can help as well in that space. Because how do you value social information above or below environmental information? And how do you value it compared to financial information? And what's the value of it? So technology could play a part in that well.
Very interesting questions, and my head starts to boggle when I hear these data points.
That's maybe a good one for next podcast.
I think so.
How do they relate?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's actually a really good one. I want to zoom in a bit about compliance, what you mentioned, Ruben. What I am curious at, what are the actual benefits of complying with the CSRD? And what I'm specifically curious at is, what is the benefit for companies, and what are the benefits for society as a whole?
Short-term benefits of complying with the CSRD when you start your process, basically none, because you have to invest in the first, couple of weeks, couple of months. But through the whole process of the CSRD, which is about taking all your stakeholders into account, you engage your stakeholders, also tell them that you're in this process, so they know you are thinking about more than just your financial returns. So basically what you do with that is you inform your stakeholders that you are involved in society as a whole and care about the environment. And if you then look at the arbeidsmarkt, in English that is the labor market, there's a lot of shortage of course in there for good employees. And companies who are concerned with ESG and also focus and perform well, younger employees from Generation Z or the millennials prefer companies that perform well in these aspects. So there's not a direct benefit of complying with it, but if you use it in the right way, in a strategic manner, you can improve your performance as a company as a whole,
and the reputation, I guess.
Yeah, through reputational benefits, there's a lot to be gained. But what you do, of course, with looking at the CSRD, but also looking at ESG in general, you see how you look at how you treat your people, how you treat the people in your value chain, and people who are treated well perform better in the long run. So there's a lot of long-term benefits of investing in ESG and performing sustainably. And this is something that the CSRD kind of guides you towards, because you have to report on what is material for your company. and you have to report on how you perform on those aspects. So, for example, say you are a producing company or a manufacturing company and you use a lot of resources. One thing that the CSRD will show is that you have a high risk when it comes to resource scarcity. It will perform a high risk for your company. So then if you see that in the future that's a risk, then you can base your decisions on that and see if there's like other ways of getting those resources or to recycle.
That is indeed a direct benefit of complying with the CSRD, of getting started with the CSRD, is that you gain insight. You gain insight in new risks that your company encounters and face. Because you discuss with all the stakeholders around your company which elements they prefer to be relevant or they see as relevant, you might encounter new areas that you have forgotten or are less get less attention. So I think it is a huge benefit for companies to gain insight in that field of information or risks that you need to address.
And of course, the CSRD is not only reporting but also disclosing it, right? What I am curious at, do we already see companies who are so proud and so far ahead, which are proactively disclosing how ESG compliant? Let's put it that way, like.
You have integrated reports in ESG or CSR reports. That's basically, I mean, there's different requirements to it, but that's basically what the CSRD tries to entail.
Yeah, you have a lot of companies already disclosing ESG information, and certain large-sized companies that already have voluntary assurance on the information as well. So there are companies that already are engaged in this process. So they have they have some room ahead. There are some front runners in the field, but the extent of the information that is required by the CSRD is much more bigger than under its predecessors.
I want to continue with you, David, because you triggered me. Let me formulate it correctly. How can companies ensure that their sustainability reporting is not only compliant, but at the same time transparent and credible?
Transparency and credibility are two requirements of being compliant with the CSRD, and there are a lot of more elements that you need to face to become compliant with the CSRD. But I think it's important to use also the information that you have within your company. So becoming compliant is one part. And to become compliant, you have several elements. So you have segregation of duties. You have using a separate IT system to register the information. You have separate processes to retrieve the information from out of your organization. That all helps to get a stable source of information that you could use as an organization. And if you use that information as well to steer your organization on the short and long term on, I think then you will have more reliable information, because if you steer on it on a monthly basis, you need to have it reliable as well. So I think that's the primary advice that we give to clients is use the information actually in your monthly or quarterly decision-making process to gain reliability, to use it.
I want to zoom in on the future.
Yes.
You both said listed companies have to report starting from 2024.
Yeah.
And after a certain size cap, all the other companies has to report starting from 2025. Ruben, how do you see the CSRD evolving in the future? And to make it a little bit harder, what impact will it have on the business landscape?
Just a minor detail. They have to report over the year of 2025, the large companies. So they don't have to start reporting in that year of the year before, but over the year of 2025 and 2024 for the listed companies. Just a small correction. But your question, how will it change the business landscape?
And how the CSRD is evolving in the future? What's your view about that?
I mean, how's it going to change the business landscape? Companies will have to become transparent on their ESG impact, which will make sure that all their stakeholders, say for example the banks, the lenders, their clients, also their employees, can then see how they're performing and what their plans are for the future. Because you also have to make strategies on how to become on your path to net zero, for example. You have to show improvement plans. So in there, you can see a lot of intent of what companies want to do and how they want to benefit not only their shareholders, but all their stakeholders, which will make sure that at some point it's easier to hold them accountable, way easier. So like what you then see if you become transparent about how you perform on certain aspect, it also becomes easier to tax certain polluting behavior. And what you now see that a lot of green taxes are coming up, of course, for a lot of companies. But yeah, if you look at the European landscape, you can already see that way more changes are ahead. Right now, it's transparency. The next step is going to be, okay, you need to produce circular products. So like it's a huge step now for a lot of companies to become transparent, but there's so much more coming from the European Union and also from other governments in the world, because there's so much to be done to make sure that we actually reach the goal of being climate neutral into 2050. So there's going to be way more. And your second question was?
I ask you, how do you see the future of the CSRD evolving, and what impact it will have on the business landscape? I mean,
I answered the second one, but maybe the CSRD, how it will evolve is more for you, our accountancy expert.
Yeah, the CSRD will be, this is just a starting point. If you compare to other regulatory frameworks like IFRS, it started off as a big transition for financial for large companies that they need to comply with the IFRS framework. And what you now see is that the IFRS framework has evolved, has become more mature. So the amount of requirements in the CSRD will also become more mature. So that's what I'm expecting. So like the 80 indicators that are now required by the framework will grow to a certain amount. And the end is unclear. But I think it is also used as a force. This transparency directive is also used as a force to swiften us to the new economy. We are now at a tipping point. We're currently on in the old economy, focusing on financial indicators, using profit as the main indicator of being a company doing well or not. And that is going to change. And this regulation or this directive is among other directives and regulation and enforcement to go to the new economy, to a new way of thinking about how businesses perform, not only financially but also non-financially. So we get a broader understanding of how companies perform. So we get also a new way of looking at doing business. So that will, depending on how swift we go to that new economy, regulation will become firmer or looser. But I think it will be firmer because we are all as human beings reluctant to change. So we need enforcement.
As I understand you correctly, we are just at the starting point, and a lot of more regulatory directives, regulations, guidelines will come in the coming decades. Yeah. So the businesses in Europe have a big task to do the coming years.
In Europe, yes, but also business who are in business with businesses in Europe. Because there's a huge supply chain effect or value chain effect in the CSRD and also in the next one, the CSDD, that looks more to the value chain. So like we're talking always about listed companies and the large size companies, but they need information of their suppliers and also their customers. So smaller companies like mid-sized companies and smaller are going to be impacted as well. If there's going to be regulations for that, I think they're still deciding upon that in the EU, or actually when it's going to be introduced.
Yeah.
But already, like when the listed companies will have to report on it, every company that does business with them will be impacted.
And I think that will be faster than the regulatory abrasion.
Exactly.
Clear. I slowly want to go towards an ending, but I want to give you both one last question. At the end, we are business consultants. So what advice would you both give to companies that are just starting their CSRD journey, and what are some of the key steps they should take in this journey? So let me start with you, David.
Our main advice is always start. Just start. And don't expect you to be at the end or at reaching your main goal being CSRD compliant in 1 or 2 years. It takes time. So therefore start as soon as possible and start as small as possible, just to get yourself familiar with steering on non-financial information and using non-financial information. So start small and start as soon as possible. That is our main advice.
And what are the main key steps a new starter has to take, according to you?
Yeah, just like Ruben stated, discuss with your stakeholders. Get insight into what your stakeholders demand from your organization, and gain insight in regulatory requirements, gain insight in new risks that your company is facing in the near future.
Yeah, I think I mean it's an obligatory step, but do your inside out and outside in risk assessment. Like you have to do it for the CSRD, and if you think about what could actually provide you with a business benefit, that is it. So consult your stakeholders and also consult them about the risks and opportunities for your companies. But that's 100% the first step every company should take.
And not to sell our business, but what we encounter with companies is that they lack capacity. They lack, and therefore they lack priority on this topic, because as it is a obligatory point in 2025 of over 2025, a lot of companies are recovering from the COVID period. They are now trying to make money in the new situation, and they have a lack of capacity, human capital wise. So there's it's pretty easy to forget this process, to say, okay, we're going to start with CSRD compliance in 2024. But then you're facing a humongous sprint towards the end of 2025 to become compliant. So start as soon as possible and use something that holds you accountable of taking the necessary steps on time. That could be an external advisor, that can be something else, but use something that enforces you to take the obligatory steps that are needed.
Thank you both. I am myself, I'm a technology lawyer, and I've printed the CSRD last week, and my God.
It's humongous.
My God. This one's going to be a hard one.
Oh, but then you can join our reading class.
I have to, I guess. I have to.
Wednesday and Friday. You're welcome.
I will knock the door. Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Ruben. Also, thank you for our listeners. And we hope to see our listeners back for episode 2. Bye-bye.